Hi everyone, so today I'm going to talk about some of the more unusual and weird symptoms and changes that can arise from a spiritual awakening. Again, these are going to be my own personal experiences and I'm going to get right into it. So I'm going to start with number one, which is changes to diet. Now for me, this looked like going off things like red meat, starting to cook from fresh, so not much processed food. But one of the big things for me was I stopped drinking alcohol. Now I was never a massive alcohol drinker anyway, but it had kind of become a bit of a habit, as it does, you know, when you're cooking and with a meal having a glass of wine. But when I went through my dark night of the soul, for some reason, I just really went off alcohol, probably because my health wasn't very good at that time and my sleeping wasn't very good. So I cut it out my diet, and then I found if I just had maybe one glass or a very even small bit of alcohol, the next day I'd feel awful, and it was just making me feel worse at that particular time. And I felt like my body just wasn't tolerating it like it used to. So that's something I cut out and have never gone back to since, and I don't miss it at all. Occasionally at Christmas I might want a little sip or something, but generally I haven't really missed that. And another thing I found around that time as well was I started with intolerances to certain foods. So I cut out things like dairy as well, try to cut down my sugar, which I still struggle with, and some of the wheat and things like that from my diet. So the way I eat has totally changed, and I've cut out alcohol as well. That doesn't mean you have to, it's just that personally my body just didn't seem to tolerate it anymore. And all the things I'm going to discuss today in isolation can seem quite small, but actually their impact can be quite big. So for example, for me, not drinking anymore was impactful on socialising and friendships, you know, having to explain why you're not drinking anymore. A lot of people's social life revolves around drinking and going to the pub and things like that. So actually it was impactful in how it affected my life and my lifestyle and who I was hanging around with as well. So just one thing to point out, because having gone through all this stuff myself, I know how it can affect the way you live your life and the people who are in it. And you get a lot of questions as well. It's like, why aren't you eating that anymore? Why aren't you drinking anymore? Or, you know, why don't you come to the pub anymore? Those types of things. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I know that can be really difficult for some people too. So number two, sensory overload. And for me, I really found being in crowds difficult. And one of the big things I noticed is I just couldn't do cities anymore. Now, having been a massive city girl growing up and in my 20s, 30s, loved going to the city, loved going out for cocktails, drinking, going out for something to eat, going and doing a day's shop somewhere nice, and buying things that, you know, that was all things I used to really like. But now I just cannot go into a city. I find it overwhelming. I feel depressed. I just want to get out of there. And I actually stopped going to cities around COVID actually, and didn't miss it and haven't gone back. So much so I've actually moved out to the country. So I've moved out into really rural area. It's not built up at all, and I really feel that contrast now. Even if I just go to a built up town, something like that, I'm kind of ready to get away pretty quickly. So that might be something that you notice as well, where you just can't deal with noisiness, crowds, lots of people, kind of industrial areas, you know, they kind of bring your mood down. You feel a little bit almost depressed and feel like you've got to get away. Well, that's certainly how I've felt, and that's been quite extreme in that I've actually moved to get away from those built up areas. Number three, you may find you can't do much small talk or superficial level talk anymore. And being an introvert, I've always found this difficult anyway. The thought of doing things like networking at work or anything like that, it just fills me with dread. But I feel I can do less of it now. And I think when you're waking up, you kind of have this BS alarm that you start to notice it straight away in people, or if people are being inauthentic, and I really pick up on that really quickly, and I really struggle to do the false small talk that we're all expected to do and talk about the same things, and it kind of just jars with me now, and I find it a lot of what people talk about, and this is no judgment because I used to talk about all these types of things, just feels very superficial. And so, for example, I was a makeup artist, loved makeup. I could talk about it till the cows came home. I could talk about skincare. I could talk about, I don't know, a handbag I wanted, the shoes I wanted, that brand that I wanted. I could do all of that, and I have done in the past, and I've had friendships that were based very much around that as well. But now I just can't do that, and I struggle with it. And again, then that affects with who you hang around with, who you talk to. If I have to do it for whatever reason, I can only spend a small time doing it, and I have to sort of go away and be on my own for a bit and decompress afterwards. So yeah, that's one of the things I've really struggled with, and still do now. Being introverted, it makes it even harder because I've always struggled with that anyway. So you may understand where I'm coming from there if you're experiencing that too. Number 4, changes to appearance. So I don't hear many people talk about this, but the way I dress is completely different to how I used to dress, and I think part of the reason I've gone to the country, it's a lot more sort of laid back, casual. I don't feel the need to be trotting around in high heels like I used to all the time and getting really glammed and dressed up. I don't do any of that anymore. I dress quite casually, practically. I'm out walking the dog in my wellies, in my trainers. At this time of year, walking around in mud all the time. So yeah, I'm also just not drawn to buy the brands or to look a particular way, to follow fashion like I used to. Used to be really into any of that. I just have no interest in that whatsoever. Just doesn't mean anything to me. And the other physical things that can change as well in your appearance is weight changes. And I do hear this talked about sometimes. When I went through my dark night of the soul, I lost tons of weight. A lot of weight very rapidly, but I was highly stressed at that time. I was going through a separation and just tons of other life events at the same time. But then I also found I put it on and then couldn't lose it like I used to be able to. So it kind of just stuck to me, I felt, particularly around my stomach. And it kind of fluctuates as well, so it can go upwards and downwards. But yeah, that's not uncommon to either lose a lot of weight or put on weight. And you will find that rhythm will come back into your body, but that's quite normal while your body's going through a lot of different changes internally and upgrades and recalibrations and resets and all sorts going off there if you're going through the ascension process. Number 5 is changes in your sleep. Now for me this was massive and one of the hardest things I've had to deal with. My sleep was pretty non-existent when I went through the dark night of the soul, and I felt like my nervous system was stuck on high alert all the time as well. And even this week I've really struggled with my sleep. The last 2 nights in particular I've had maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep, and that's been broken. Although I would have said that was pretty good when I was in my dark night of the soul, where I was really just struggling to sleep at all. And I also notice it can change with the moon as well, cycle, which I probably before would have thought was nonsense, but I have actually seen I've seen that in my life, where if it's a full moon or something, I don't always sleep as well that night. Or a full moon, new moons, that can affect it. Solar flares can affect it as well. That was a thing I had no idea about. But again, I do see that sometimes when we get big solar flares, it does impact my sleep. And there can be all sorts of reasons as well why we go through this, but can be hormonal changes too. But I also find that I wake early in the morning, which is very common, so it can be around 3-4 o'clock, and sometimes I just don't get back to sleep. And sometimes if that happens, I will get up and meditate. If I know I'm just not going to get back to sleep, instead of lying in bed worrying about the fact that I can't sleep and how tired I am, sometimes I get up and go meditate, because it's kind of like the next best thing, and it just takes my mind off all that worry. So I'm just saying that in case that helps anybody out there, but it is just one of those things that you kind of just have to surrender to, and I find it really, really difficult because it affects my mental health and the way my brain functions as well at work. So it is one of those things that you can really get into a worry cycle about. So if you are going through that, I do know what that's like, and it's definitely been one of the more difficult symptoms that I've had to deal with along the way. Number 6 is intuition and your online senses. So I found my intuitions really heightened since I've gone through my awakening. I feel like on the bigger life decisions, I'm able to tap into that intuition more and listen to my body, listen to those very small whispers about what I should be doing and trusting them more. I also pick up more when I meet people as well, so I can pick up on people's energy very quick. If I go into the office, I know straight away who's in a good mood, who's not, who's going through something, whether it's best to leave that person alone today. If they're in a good mood, I can pick up on any tension in the room as well. And my online senses came on board as well, which can be one of those things that can feel really scary, especially if you don't know anything about it or don't know anybody that's experienced about it, so you don't have anybody to talk to. But this is very common, and it happened to me. So things like I started getting through information in meditation, I started seeing auras spontaneously, I started seeing colours around birds, things like trees as well, and that's never left me, so now that's just normal. If I look up to the sky, see a bird, and they have a really vivid colour around them. So it's things like that can feel a little bit scary, but they're actually all part of the changes that are happening in your body and energetically as you start to ascend. And another thing I noticed was my dreams became some of them more vivid, but I started having dreams that then certain things in those dreams would come true too. So I'd be given information, I don't know, say about a friend, something's going off in their life, and I'd find out that's actually happening. Events in the world as well. Sometimes I'd go to sleep, I always write them down, and I just know, I don't know how, but I just know that I needed to pay attention to that dream, so I'd write it down, and then that world event that I dreamt about, so it could have been like an earthquake or a tsunami, something like that, would then happen a few days later. So yes, all these weird and wonderful things can start happening to you that seem odd, unusual. You feel like you can't talk to anybody about it, but it is very much part of the process. Go with it, and you might find that you want to develop these things as well, because they are a gift. You know, they've helped me in many ways, and picking up energy is also useful. It tells you who to stay away from sometimes and not to get involved in certain things, and also who you're drawn to and who's more on your wavelength. So yeah, do try, and there's so much stuff online now anyway. You can listen to some of my videos, and I am going to do a more in-depth video about that particular thing, in things that I'm getting through meditation and your senses coming online. But there's more and more stuff now out on YouTube and books about this type of thing too. So please don't feel you're alone in this. This is a very normal part of the process. Number 7, so a decline in what you're consuming and are changing what you're consuming. So I've talked a little bit about this in terms of a decline in, I'm not interested in brands and things like that and buying things anymore like I used to be. And I've also changed in what I consume. So the way, so for example, I used to watch live TV. Now I very rarely do that. I will watch what I want to watch, what I'm interested in. I find live TV now very inauthentic. I feel like the media as well is just selling us a load of fear. So I really struggle to watch a lot of the mainstream things that are on TV. I don't really do violence and horror or anything like that too. So because I'm very sensitive, I really struggle to watch those types of things. Always have actually, but more so now. So I steer away from that, and I just really use my time to learn, watch documentaries, go down rabbit holes and things that I'm interested in. So you may find that what you consume is totally different too, and also what you want to spend your money on is totally different. So maybe the things that you used to enjoy doing and consuming now, you just don't get the same joy from it. So again, quite normal, and I'm definitely less materialistic than I used to be. I would say I was quite materialistic, not massively, but I was quite materialistic in the things that I wanted. I do think that's kind of our conditioning though, and that's just a normal part of what we think we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to have in our lives. But you start to go through a process where you start asking, well, why do I need that? Why do I need that in my life? Well, it's just because other people say I do, and you can kind of start to see everything and how things work and really have your eyes opened with that. And number 8 is periods of anxiety and depression, which is really common. Again, I've been through both. Anxiety has always been a big thing for me anyway. I've always been very shy and anxious even as a child, and very highly sensitive too. And I struggled with tons of anxiety, particularly when I was in the dark night of the soul, and I still do. I'm able to turn it round quicker now than I used to be able to do. But yeah, periods of anxiety and depression. And I have to say recently I have felt very low. I mean, it is January and dreary and dark out there, and I think a lot of people struggle with that anyway. But I've just been going through a phase at the moment where I just feeling this lack of enjoyment in things, and I know that's because I'm going through a lot of internal changes at the moment. I've really felt that over the last month. Things that I've been interested in are changing again, and I just have this knowing that there's internal changes going on, and I'm feeling I just can't get interested in the things that I used to be interested in, and this is all part of the ongoing internal changes that we go through. The changes in our nervous system as well, which can affect things. You can have periods of anxiety where your nervous system is just shot. If you've been through lots of stress, that won't help either. So yeah, that's very normal, but I also know it's really difficult periods to get through, and trying to explain it to other people as well is really difficult. If they haven't ever experienced anything like that, they're not going to understand. So anxiety and depression is very normal when you're going through spiritual awakening and in a dark night of the soul. And advice wise, really, well, I don't know if I have tons of advice on it, rather just to surrender to it and accept it, because as they say, what you resist persists, which is very true with things like anxiety. The more you worry about it, the more it becomes a bigger thing. So now when it comes, I do just allow it to come more than I used to do, and I just know that it will pass, and that it's temporary, and I just get out the way and just let it do what it needs to do. So that's my little bit of advice. But there are also some great books out there as well if you're really struggling with anxiety. There was one that I read by Paul David, Last a Life it's called. He was, I think he had anxiety for around 10 years, like severe anxiety. So that's a good book if you want to go and read something around that. And yeah, again, there's loads of people now talking about this online and talking about mental health as well, which is brilliant and is much needed. And number 9 is heightened senses. So this can be sensitivity to sound, which is something I went through. Just went through a really, again, in the dark night of the soul, I think it's probably my nervous system was on high alert as well. But I also just can't deal with lots of sound and noise anymore. And another reason why I just can't go into cities and crowds, it just is overwhelming to me. Tinnitus, I know as well, high-pitched noises in your ears. Sometimes I just get this very randomly, which can be changes energetically going off as well. Some people say it can be things like your guides coming in as well. But I used to worry about this. I just don't anymore. I just know it will come and go and pass, and it's all just part of the ascension process. And the other thing I have felt as well is heightened sensitivity. So I suddenly out of the blue started getting tingles. Now I know a lot of people talk about this and they call them the truth bumps, but I've never experienced this until I started going through my awakening journey, and I've experienced it quite a lot, and I experience it sometimes just out of the blue. And other times it can be when somebody said something that I know is true, or maybe something that I'm supposed to listen to. I will get the tingles all the way up my legs, and it's the same if I say something out loud to somebody, and then again all my legs will start tingling, and I know that means to take note of what's been said, or it could be somebody saying something on TV as well. It's like listen to what's being said right now. And speaking to other people as well, I know that that's a thing and something that's quite common. And the other thing I'd never felt before was things like pressure on my crown, tingling on my crown. Sometimes this can be, it feels like I've got something actually crawling on the top of my head. And that, again, that's just energy, and it's just that we're becoming more sensitive to feeling energy as well. So that can be, like, again, tingles in the legs, crown pressure. People can have physical sensations around their heart as well. And I know I've had lots going on in meditation. I've felt things moving around, energy moving around, all sorts of weird and wonderful things there. So heightened senses is definitely a thing. And again, totally normal and all part of the process. So those are my 9 weird or unusual things that can happen during a spiritual awakening. I know some of them can be a bit scary sometimes, or you don't really know what's going on, but they are definitely all part of the process, and they definitely have been for me. Again, I'd like to know if there's anything you've experienced. Maybe you think I've left something out, something quite obvious, and I could have done. But those are my 9 things. I'd love to hear about yours as well. So as always, feel free to drop something in the comments. I read all the comments, and I find this stuff really, really interesting anyway. So I'm going to leave you for today. Have a really good day, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks, bye.